Hello, we're going to go over a little bit of Google Earth, specifically the web version. So let me just share my screen with you and get to working on a PowerPoint. Okay. So the objectives here are just to identify the Google Earth layout. We're going to go over through the projects menu because that's really one of those tools you're going to use for these labs. I'll talk to you about how to load a KMZ file, what that is. And then the key with Google Earth is we're using it to actually collect data. Okay? And we're using these data for doing analyses of the Earth's surface. In this case, latitude, longitude, and elevations. Distances can also be included there. And then finally, we'll also talk a little bit about how to change the units because you may want feet, or you may want meters, or you may want something slightly different. Now, there's an alternative program called Google Earth Pro. Now, Pro is something that you would download to your computer. Again, it is very similar. It does many of the same things. It's actually a little bit more powerful in terms of changing units and making measurements. So it's intuitive once you understand the basics of Google Earth on the web. You can maybe move to Pro. Okay. So Google Earth is a free geographic information system program. The idea is that we can georeference different parts of the Earth, and there are non-free versions of these out there that are much more powerful and versatile. Okay, what are you looking at when you're on Google Earth? You're looking at satellite imagery. Depending on the program you use, it may be historic, or it may be very recent imagery. Okay, and then what kinds of excuse me, measurements can we make? Elevation, location, okay, so latitude, longitude, UTM coordinates, and then lengths, widths, areas, and of course with areas, then you could even convert some of these measurements to volumes. Okay? In the programs I use, I will be adding in or showing you how to add in what are called KMZ files. These are keyhole markup zip files or keyhole markup language files. These files contain data that has been georeferenced that I would like you to go to. So I'm putting in preloading places for you to visit and tasks for you to do in your labs. So we need to learn how to open these in Google Earth. It's pretty simple. Okay, so here's the basic screen layout. This is the web version. I'll show you how to open it and get into it in another video. Okay. On the left-hand side here, we see some icons. Up here, you see this is my desktop, and on the right, that's my desktop. So it's everything kind of in this screen here is part of Google Earth. We have 3 bars at the top. We have search here, which is the spyglass, navigate, roll the dice. These 2 guys here are not very useful. We won't be using them. We have our project button or icon, the layers icon, and then the ruler here for making measurements. Down on the right-hand side, we have another sort of a lot more bits of information. You have some tools. You can actually do 3D versions of the surface of the Earth by clicking this button. It'll switch to 3D. You can do a few other things here, but the compass is also important. And then zooming in and out, and then you can actually grab onto this globe with your cursor just by clicking and dragging and sort of rotate it. I find the compass is useful for keeping my map north, and you can see how the needle is oriented sort of up, showing you the direction of north. Sometimes your rotation in this program gets you twisted. If you hold your cursor down, click on it and hold it, it'll actually switch these 2 icons. And this is one of those things where you want to just fool around a little bit with it. Okay. Now, down here in the bottom is where you're going to collect some data, or you have data given to you. Camera refers to our eye height. That's how high above the surface we are. And that's shown here, right? We see farmland, we see small roads and things like that. We see a river actually in here, the Canadian River. And so we're looking at this all from about 45 miles above the Earth's surface. This is latitude and longitude. I'm not going into the details of how or what these units mean, I'll leave that to you, but we will look at that in some labs in this class. And then finally, this is the elevation of my cursor. So 1,921 feet. So if I move my cursor over the screen, this number and this set of numbers here should change. Now, this is a PowerPoint, so they're not changing, but when we go live, you'll see them move around. So wherever I move my cursor, I get a reading for location and elevation down here on the right-hand side. Okay, so here it is just blown up. You can see 1,921 feet. Again, you have plus and minus here, so that's intuitively your zoom. You can center this, you can grab onto this earth and rotate it around, and it's actually showing you this little red pin where we are on the earth, okay, on the planet. Okay, if we're going to, let's say, change the units down here, the way to do that is to go into hit these 3 bars. Okay, 3 bars opens up this next menu. We want to go to settings. Okay, a lot of these things like photos, this is kind of fun stuff to mess around with, but we're not going to deal with it. And then other things like search, you already see in your menu bar, Voyager, you already see projects, you already see. So we want to hit settings here, the little gear. Brings up this menu, and now you have a slider on the right, so you can do some scrolling. I've scrolled down, and I have drop-down menus, so I can change from feet to miles, or degrees, minutes, and seconds. Now, in the Pro version, it's more powerful. You can actually change this to UTM coordinates. In this case, when you turn on the grid lines, and I'll show you how to do that, so you can have grids all across the screen. There is no UTM option here. Okay, so this is just the nature of maybe running this through the web. Okay, so click these drop down menus, make your selection, hit save, and then you'll go back to the program. Okay, this symbol, it's sort of a bubble with a hole or a dot in the middle, pinpointing a location. This is the projects menu, and this is the menu you want to click on to open a KMZ file. Google Earth Web, you cannot double click the file like you're normally maybe used to in Windows. You have to open it, and that is counterintuitive for a lot of people. So to get a file in, you're going to select the projects menu. Now, this is the image that shows up when there's nothing in there. If you already have a project loaded, which you can have more than one, it will show up in a menu bar on the left-hand side here with its name, okay, the name of the file. Then you go down to import KML from file from computer. So this means it's on your desk drive, or desktop. This means you've downloaded it, and that's going to be critical that you've downloaded this file. It, along with the lab, are sitting on your desktop or in a file folder that you know where they are. Click on this, it'll allow you to essentially select a file from your location in your computer, hit open, and it'll open up that KMZ or KML file. Ostensibly, KML files and KMZ files do the same thing. I'm giving you the Z because it's zipped, and that means it contains everything in the file. So we could transfer it between computers, between people, no information would be lost. When I make a KML file, that one is like kind of personally like set to my desktop. So if it contains things like images, they have to be referenced on the web and things like that. So the files are a little bit different in terms of where the file looks for information. And I'm giving you the zip version because it contains everything. Okay, that's the only reason. All right, now I've opened the file. In this case, it was the one we're going to look at in a minute, River Features, okay, or depending on where you are in the lab. It opens up a series of locations, which I've provided, okay, in the file that I want you to go to. And you can see some of them labeled here. How do I get to those features? Just double click on it. Just click on it. So this is for the Washita River. Click on it. It will take you to this location that I'm interested in. And then you have all these other features that should be referenced in your lab document, okay, and let us know, what to do with them. Okay, now, if you want to fool around with this and maybe turn on some more locations, turn on roads, turn on pictures, here you can see turn on 3D buildings. So in Chicago, you could turn on 3D buildings and look at things in perspective. That's where you do this. That's what these layers are indicating. So this is custom. You can choose what you want. This is everything. So it would turn all this stuff on. And then up here, which is slightly hidden, is something less than that. And then so it's borders, labels, places, and roads. And the one above it is a clean version. Okay. Doesn't matter. Fool around with it. Okay. That's up to you. All right. Down here, you see it says turn on grid lines. This is to toggle to the right. And what that will literally do is turn on and off your latitude and longitude lines, which will adjust themselves as you zoom in and out using the pluses and minuses. Now I can zoom in and out on this using sliding or using pinch to zoom kind of things will work as well in Google Earth. But if you get have trouble, just because I'm using a trackpad, so if you have trouble, just hit plus and minus and it'll zoom you in. Okay, the last tool is here, excuse me, which is your ruler tool. And this is the primary tool we're going to use for measurements. And so the idea is you select it, it gives you a cursor, you click, drag, and you can see a line I've dragged out here. Click again, even double click, and it will leave the line there. Now the line is temporary, but in the right-hand side, it opens a dialog box and I get a measurement. So this line through Kansas to Shreveport, almost to Shreveport, is 507 miles. Okay, and then I can change all the units here in the drop box for this thing. Now, if I wanted to make a rectangle, I would just literally do, click, 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 come back to my original dot and click again, and it would create a rectangle. I could change the shape of it. You can even create a permanent feature like this, but we're not going to worry about that in this class. Okay, all right, so what do? We looked at the basic layout. We loaded a KMZ file, at least talked about how to do it, talked about how to change units, and we've wrapped up with the measurement tool. The program is pretty intuitive, which means you need to fool around with it. Okay, this is one of those things where if you just click on a bunch of buttons, you can't mess anything up. You can always redo, you can always reload things, you can always give it another try. So doing a little bit of fooling around on your own, you may find it to be very interesting. Okay, thanks a lot.